Hello, I'm Ken Morton from 12 Guitars. 12 Guitars is a social enterprise that gets guitars into the hands of young people and into the community where they would otherwise not have access to guitars. We also teach them how to play guitars, and the tuition are free at the point of delivery. So please get involved, look up 12guitars.org, that's 12guitars.org, and find out more about what we do. I'm delighted today to be able to welcome Chris Glen of the Sensational Alex Harvey Band, and Chris Glen in the outfit, and also the Michael Schenker group, who is going to be talking to our John Hatfield today about his experiences as a rock bass guitarist. I'm also absolutely delighted to thank Andy Mooney, the president of Fender Guitars in California, for his donation of this fabulous precision bass. It's a Fender 50s Vintera model. Chris Glen famously played a precision bass in his early days with the Alex Harvey Band, and he's going to be talking more about the competition that's going to be coming up. So watch out for future news. This will be either raffled or auctioned for some lucky player out there. I'd also like to thank Jason Howe of Rotosound Strings. Now, Rotosound Strings have been around since the 50s, and all the great players have used Rotosound Strings. And here at 12 Guitars, we're delighted to have them as a partner. All the guitars we get donated to us are refurbished and are strung with Rotosound strings, because in our opinion, they are the best. And thank you to Jason for his kind support for 12 Guitars. Now, without any further ado, I'd like to hand over to John Hatfield and to Chris Glen of the Alex Harvey Band.
Hi there, welcome to Govan. I'm John Hatfield for 12 Guitars, and I'm very happy today to be joined by the legendary Chris Glen of the Sensational Alex Harvey Band, who's lending his support to 12 Guitars. Now, we also have some very interesting breaking news, as we journalists like to say. Thanks to Chris's involvement, we've heard from the president of Fender Guitars in America, who has very kindly donated this vintage Vintera 1950s precision bass, a real collector's item, because he's a huge fan of Chris and the Sensational Alex Harvey Band. So we're delighted to have this, and we're going to be raffling this or auctioning it to raise money for 12 Guitars. But before we tell you any more about that, I'd now like to ask Chris to talk to us a little bit about how he got involved with 12 Guitars. So, Chris, thanks for joining us today on Stormy Sunday.
Hello everybody, and thank you, John, for inviting me here to the 12 Guitars headquarters. As you can see, there's the logo, which doesn't look too bad at all. Here's the wonderful Vintera guitar. While we're on the subject of the Fender Vintera, I'd just to give a big thanks to Andy Mooney, the president of Fender, who was not only a Sensational Alex Harvey Band fan, he was a Tear Gas fan. If you know anything about that, Tear Gas were the band that became the Sensational Alex Harvey Band. It's a wonderful guitar. It's one of the first ones I did. My project manager, Ken Morton, and I, when I first joined, Ken got in touch with Andy, told him I was with the company, and Andy seemed to think it was a good idea to get this guitar over to sort of donate for me to auction or raffle for the company. So there it is in all its glory, and thank you very much, Andy Mooney. Now, the reason I got involved in all this is Ken Morton, who's the projects manager here. He's fixed various guitars of mine in the past, rather well, I may add. And he told me about this social enterprise, which I thought, I get involved in charities, but I do No12 Bus and I do Alzheimer's, and that's basically all I do, because if I do any more, you get asked to do too many. But this being a social enterprise, and the basic idea of it is, they've got literally 40, 50 guitars, and means young kids can have a guitar to try out. So we can lend them a guitar, they can learn, they can come up with us, we can teach them, and hopefully a lot more can come of it. And that's basically the idea. But the whole thing is to, don't be shy, come up and say you want to learn.
Now, that's great, Chris. I'm sure a lot of the young people who are getting involved with 12 Guitars will be looking for inspiration from people such as yourself, who have shown that you can actually make a career, build your confidence, be part of a team with a guitar in your hand. Now, it's called 12 Guitars, not one bass, but I think they'd be interested in finding out from your good self, how did you first get into bass playing?
I first got into bass playing I was a mod. I had a scooter with 17 wing mirrors on it, a Lambretta 200. And I used to go and watch bands, and I liked the bass, always did like the bass, and I'd see bands and I'm going, you know, I could do as good as that. So I sold my scooter and I tried, and then it was that my first bass was a precision bass, and I tried that, and I was in a band called Tear Gas, and we had a few different singers, made a couple of albums. Then we bumped into Alex Harvey, and as the saying goes, I've never had to worry about money again because I've never had any. But no, it went from strength to strength, and I've been very, very lucky in the business. But it just shows, just try. All you can do is try. Start off with 12 bars and see how far you get after that, which we'll explain later to kids when we're teaching them.
Now, obviously, you have played with a lot of the greats in your time with the Alex Harvey Band, with the Michael Schenker group, with your own Glen outfit. Ian Gillan as well is somebody you've toured with, and I think you know all the best drummers from Keith Moon's Sideways.
Yes.
But I think maybe some of the young people watching might be interested to know, who are your own big influences in terms of bass guitarists? Maybe some of your favourite bass guitarists are the ones you respect.
It's a hard one to say. I started off listening to 12 bars, as I say, and that was John Mayall and Andy Fraser. Ended up with 3. I mean, he was playing with John Mayall when he was 16. He was playing an echo bass, as I believe. He was an influence on me. John Entwistle was an influence on me, simply because of the fact that if you listen to The Who, where you've got Pete Townsend playing the chords, Keith Moon sounds as if the building's collapsing, and you've got to have something in between that makes it into a song, and John Entwistle managed to do that pretty good. There's great players like Stanley Clarke, Jaco Pastorius, but to me they show up, for rock purposes, they show up the limitations of the bass as a solo instrument, you know. I'll never do a drum solo on stage with a drummer doing a drum solo, because it means they want a bass solo first. And here comes the rain again. Isn't that beautiful? What
stormy Sunday.
What a wonderful backdrop. So I hope that answers your question, John.
It certainly does. Now, I was very interested you mentioned the great John Entwistle of The Who, because he's one of my personal favourite bass players as well. And as you say, he played it almost like a lead guitar. What do you see the role of the bassist being in a band for all those youngsters out there who might be interested in joining
it depends on what type of band you've got. I mean, if you've got a prog band, the game's over with, you know. But most bands, I tend to think the rhythm section, which would be the bass, guitar, and the drums. And if you can get a nice little syncopation going there, the rhythm section would consist of the next person to play with you, the piano player or the guitarist. That's what the song's built. I mean, to me, a real song, if you can't go on a piano or an acoustic guitar and sing the song in a room, that's a song. A lot of the modern songs, it's just a production. There's no actual song there. You know, it's just, it disappears up its own, whatever you call these things.
Fundament, you know? I think we say before the watershed.
It disappears up a tunnel, then comes back again.
It's great what you say about live music. Obviously, we're missing live music a lot these days.
Oh, tell me about it, yeah. I mean, I did a live stream on what was it, my Facebook last week, which went rather well, I believe, and the sound was good. But that's just your luck. And at least we were all in the same room when it happened. But you couldn't put on a show because you've got to stay that far apart, and it's got to be in a straight line for the cameras. But I really don't know what we're going to do these days. I really don't, unless you want to get a big gig, put 100 people in it when it's empty and charge them £1,000 a ticket. You know, it's really not going to fly. And I think, without being too optimistic, folks, you're going to be looking until at least next summer before you're going to see anything happening. And even festivals, I'm not too sure about. I mean, they'll start football matches, and then people will start catching it again. So they'll say no festivals.
That's right. Yeah, that's what we call a catchy tune, isn't it?
But fingers crossed that won't happen. You know, fingers crossed that won't happen. In Glasgow, we wouldn't have that much of a problem. But if you look here, unfortunately, the cameras can't turn around. It's a lovely big facility you have here, and you can see we can fit 2 buses in it, and you wouldn't even notice them. You know, and I think this could be a great venue. Honestly, a great venue. And you can block it off in places and seal it off.
One of the interesting things you were raising earlier about the fact that, you know, bass players, obviously part of the band with the rhythm section, but you can't really sit down and play a bass on your own and sing those tunes that you were talking about the way you can with the piano. So what does a bass player do when he can't play with other people? Is it necessary to be in the rehearsal studio with others?
Basically what I do is, let's say you've got drums and a guitar playing something. I rehearse in my head. I go, right, would that work? No. not work? Would that work? Instead of wasting a lot of time, we'll come up with about 3 different parts, and we see what works. You can tell when you've got it. You can tell when it's right, and whether it's just a boom, 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 or going like that. You can figure it out in your head, really. Well, after a few years you can. I mean, I don't rehearse.
Yeah.
I really don't, unless it's really cold before you go on stage and I'm going to keep my hands up on the bass, like these ones today. It's freezing in here. That's basically the thing. You've got to, if you do things separately, a lot of times the albums are recorded with, they record the drums, then they record the bass, then they record the guitar. If you're not all sitting in the same room, there's no camaraderie, and it sounds like a production, it sounds like a construction. It doesn't sound like a performance to me, you know?
Now, obviously
And that's what we'll be teaching these kids. You get a band of kids together, like, I mean, maybe I'll stand in with them, and you get a guitarist, and you get a drummer, and I'll stand in with them, and it'll give them a chance to see what it's like playing with somebody like that. And then you substitute a bass player and see if we can put a wee band together out of them.
Yeah. Now, obviously, you've played with some of the most incredible live acts. The Sensational Alex Harvey Band were renowned for the innovation and the creativity of their shows, and also the sort of sense of debauchery as well on stage.
Well, yeah. On stage.
On stage, well, and off. What's the secret of making a good band? How do you get a good band that gels together as opposed to a band that has all the problems and can't make it happen?
Well, a really good band is just a really good a band of brothers, band of friends. I mean, you're really pals, and it's only small arguments, not big arguments, you know. Just talk about, I don't like your hair that way, or you owe me a tenner for that last round. That's the kind of arguments you want in a band, really. Yeah. You know, heavier than that. You've got, it's not the 1 hour on stage or 2 hours on stage, it's the 24 hours off stage that cause all the arguments and get things going. And is he getting paid more than me? Is he that? And that's the thing that you don't think about when you're just young kids starting off in the world.
It's all about the excitement, isn't it?
That's it.
And Chris, can you tell us, do you still get that thrill? We're talking about you coming up to your 70th birthday. Can't believe you're almost that age, really can't. But do you still get that thrill after almost 50 years since
I do. I've got a process I go through. It's to give you that sort of butterflies in your stomach. You know, you want a feeling of nervousness before you go in. You want to sort of go, this is some sense of occasion, as opposed to walking on stage and going, what are all these people doing in my living room? You know, what's going on here? So if you go on with a slight sense of occasion, then the music should take care of itself. If you've practiced enough.
If you've practiced enough, and that's the crucial thing. Do you still practice? I know you don't rehearse, you rehearse in your head,
I practice with the band, I don't practice by myself, unless it's a particular thing I want to do. Because I find that the more you practice, the more you start sticking these wee bits you've practiced into a song, because they're clever and they're good, and not necessarily right for the song. You know, you know, the song can be about, you know, now that my baby's gone and left me and I'm heartbroken, and I come in with Happy Days Are Here Again, you know, on the bass. So it's really worth checking out what the whole song's about. But the most important thing for a bass player is his drummer, and I've been very fortunate. I've been people like Cozy Powell, Ted McKenna, Filthy Taylor from Motorhead, and various other drummers, Chris Slade from AC/DC. You know, very, very good drummers. All, I have to tell you, completely different, but all unique and great in their own way.
And I think that's something that's of interest to young bass players starting out, is that ability to mesh with the drummer. Have you got any tips or techniques around that?
Yeah, well, as I say, I'm going to hopefully, guys, do a video, and I'm going to do it a bit like Mary Baker. It's like, I'm going to teach you how to make a boiled egg. I'll start off with the way I learned, and we'll start off with just showing you the strings and the bass, how to get different tones out of it. And we start off with 12 bars, because a drummer can play a 12 bar, a bass player can play a 12 bar. So once you get used to syncopating that, then you can make a 13 bar or a 14 bar. And then we can go into 3/4, you know, 5/4, the harder bits. But unless you can grasp the basics, I mean, I'm not going to be like a school teacher saying, write that down, write this down. If it's in your head, and basically if you're a bass player, if you can hum it, you should be able to play it. That's most important, seriously.
That's a good tip. And another thing, I suppose, when you're starting out in bands, I've seen it a lot in younger bands, there's a nervousness, there's an excitement, but what's the worst that can happen to you playing live, Chris, from your own experience?
Two things is you corpse. If you corpse, you tighten up, you stiffen up, which can sometimes gives you cramp. The other thing is you have a sort of a mental blackout, and as far as, the best way of explaining it is, someone in the audience, it could be a fight, it could be just something that distracts you for a second, and you go, oh, wait a minute, have we done the solo yet? Have we done the last chorus? What's that last bit? That's the kind of things that happen to you on stage, and I can't stand foot watchers. The guys that come on with guitar, I mean, it used to be a deal, some bands would do it. They walk on stage and they're like that.
Yeah.
They're either looking at the guitar or looking at the floor, and I'm going, these people paid money, lift your head up a bit and watch them. Also, for singers, the people that are standing at the front looking at you, you've got them, or half, at least they're looking at you, which is half the battle. It's the people up the back of the hall that the guy's trying to kiss the girl. You want their attention, and you want them looking at you. If you focus your attention up on them, the people at the front will get it. And at least, why should the people up the back, they'll say, well, he's not looking at us, why should we look at him? And that's a good way of getting the band across to the audience. And so long as the whole band's like that, if you're happy, that comes across.
You're giving them a show rather than just a rendition.
Or an experience of something, but an experience of foot watching is not a great experience, let me tell you.
Shoegazers, yeah.
Aye,
fashion again, aren't they?
shoegazers, yeah. I'll remember it, shoegazers, that's a good one.
Shoegazers, yeah. You heard it here second. So that's fantastic, Chris. Is there anything else that you would like to share with sort of young, aspiring bass players? Maybe share with them what you get out of playing a bass that you maybe don't get out of playing the more obvious,
well,
sexy
the one worry about playing a bass is the size of it. And mine are even longer than this, one of the ones I've got. And it's clunking people on stage, because it's literally going round like a helicopter blade. You've got to watch that. The other thing with the bass is not getting too far away from the drummer and syncopating with the bass drum. Now, I can't state that enough. The bass drum is what you do. That's when you find out who's got the best sense of time, you or the bass player. As famous Frank Zappa once said to me, he said, if you think you're playing in time, you're speeding up. If you think you're actually slowing down, you're playing in time. And I thought, I thought that's the best advice I've ever heard, and it's usually right. And don't get distracted. Just stay in your own room. Once you've mastered your own room, then start listening about to what everyone else is doing. In fact, Ken will tell you that. He's a project manager. He's got his own band. He knows exactly what I'm doing. If you're in a bubble, no good. The rest, as I say, it's a band. It's a group of people together, and you've all got to do your part.
That's brilliant, Chris, thanks. And my fellow guitarist and muso and also director of 12 Guitars, Steve Plummer, would not forgive me if I didn't ask you about your rig and your number of basses. Now, Steve puts 12 guitars in the shade. He's got about 25, one per song, or even more than one per song. Does a bass player just need one bass, 4 strings, and the truth, or what do you use?
Well, the thing the most I've ever had in my house is maybe a dozen. That was when I was stupid, and hanging up on walls and everything, and gold albums on the walls. And I don't do that anymore. Let me think now. I've got 3, maximum 4 bass guitars. Obviously, the one I use on stage and a spare. I've got an acoustic bass guitar, but you can also plug that in, and another guitar, and I've also got a Perspex Stratocaster guitar, right? Just because it looks good hanging on the wall. But I would say 3 is nearly one too many. You only need a couple of guitars, really.
Yeah. And I suppose at this stage for Ken, we should say that you should also use Roto bass strings.
Roto Sound are a very, 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 very good company. They were the first endorsement I had, actually, Roto Sound. I think it was William Morris they were through at the time. They were great, and they seem to be doing a very, very, very good job, Roto Sound. That's not a plug, but
a plug
very, very good job, Roto Sound. I like their strings.
Yeah. And just before we go, Chris, as we say, you're coming up to your 70th birthday. You're looking great on it. By the Rolling Stone standards, you're a mere youngster. But how are you going to be celebrating? Will there be music involved?
Well, we're going to lockdown the day before my birthday. So,
I knew you were coming.
I'm not quite sure
Your
about that.
reputation goes ahead of you.
What I'll maybe do is I'll maybe be in with my wife. I can't have visitors. And sit back and listen to the Max radio station.
All I'd like to say is Chris Glen,
That's my name.
legend.
Yeah.
Thank you very much for joining us on this occasion of 12 Guitars promoting itself to the world, and we're delighted to have you on board.
And keep it safe on board, just to show that we're...
Yep.
That's it, we're keeping our distance, and that's it. See, we're doing it well.
There
And listen,
we are.
look, have a good time, everybody. Don't take things too seriously, and enjoy and look up 12 Guitars and really, really see what we can do for you.